Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Southern California-based jazz big band composer and arranger Elliot Deutsch. He talked at length with us about his latest 2018 CD, Make Big Band Great Again. He is an award-winning arranger and composer, and his music has been featured for jazz ensemble performed by big bands at USC, UCLA, Cal Arts, and many other outfits. Along with performing and recording, he's an active music educator and a strong supporter of the future and growth of jazz and big bands. So please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Elliot, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz, man. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And I want to dive right in here to your latest album, Make Big Band Great Again. And I got to say, I really dig this album. And the thing that I think I admire as well as the music is that in this current world we live in, I think the artist's decision to make themselves known as those that aren't really into certain things that are going on in this world is pretty key. You make it very evident in this album. So trying to be as safe as I can with that, because I think the one thing I try not to do that much in interviews and in general on my shows to get involved with the political quagmires of this world, which we obviously know that music is a detour, thank God, because there's enough that we need to be detoured from. But I think it's also very key with this being pretty overt with the red hat and the name of the songs, fake news and other things that we discuss this pretty openly. So I want to ask you on a couple of fronts, talk to me how you feel about this album and the message that you're putting out with this.
Well, I mean, I'm very proud of it. I mean, I wrote the entire thing. This is my third album. So, I mean, a lot of people might not be aware of who I am or what I'm doing, but this is my third sort of attempt into this. And I thought with this time, as opposed to the other two, it was really important that I had sort of a cohesive vision when I set out to write the record. The previous two albums that I did were, for lack of a better way of putting it, sort of like the best things I've written since the last record kind of a record. And this one, although there was plenty of music I'd written since my last release, I decided that instead of recording that stuff, I'd instead just write an entire record based on, sort of a theme that I thought resonated with me. And it took me a long time to sort of arrive at that theme. And we did, and my last record was called The Push, and we put that out in 2014. And sort of maybe, right around the end of 2014, I started thinking ahead to what I do for the next one. I went through a lot of different iterations, but I mean, I wrote the bulk of the record in 2016. When sort of these politics were on everybody's mind, and they were definitely at the front of my mind, and it was sort of hard to center a project on anything else.
How important do you feel it is for the artist to come out and say, you know what, this isn't working?
Musically or just?
I think probably both. I think musically and politically.
I mean, I don't know how important, as an independent jazz artist, I don't, is critical, and I'm not going to get into the specific politics that you asked, but I can't really see anyone listening to my instrumental jazz record and then changing their political views based on it. Like, that's not really what I set out to do. I'm more sort of writing pieces using those, topics that I did. I have a piece on there called Fake News and a piece called Repeal and Replace. And basically, these instrumental compositions, I used our personal feelings on those ideas politically to sort of drive the composition. So you can listen to the album with that in mind, and there's sort of a deeper purpose to it. But, I mean, the record works on its own, separate from the politics.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about where you were born and raised.
All right. So I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Chatsworth, near Los Angeles. But I wasn't really in, the scene per se, or anyone that knows sort of Los Angeles geography knows that Chatsworth is pretty far away from downtown. It's about, a 45, 50-minute drive, and we didn't really go out that direction very often, so I might as well have been anywhere. I didn't actually make it into Hollywood as, to see the music scene at all until my senior year of high school. A bunch of friends of mine and myself put together a funk band and did some James Brown covers. and booked a gig on the Sunset Strip, and that was my first, journey toward the actual LA music scene. But then I went to college at UCLA and got a degree in jazz studies, and then from there I went to Cal State Long Beach and got my master's. While I was working on my master's, I started to get into writing, and now, years later, writing is really my focus.
What music, jazz music, did you get into in the beginning that really hooked you, that made you feel the jazz?
My father, although he's a NASA scientist, he works for JPL, and he has, since before I was born. He also on the weekends plays Dixieland jazz, and there used to be a really big Dixieland circuit. And every weekend there's a big Dixieland festival somewhere in the country, and he was playing with the Dixieland band that was, pretty popular in that scene, and he was out of town, I don't know, once or twice a month playing at different festivals, and a lot of times he'd bring me along, and I'd get to see the other Dixieland bands. So early on, traditional jazz was really big for me, and I guess I started playing in big band in high school and sort of jumped into, all the Glenn Miller stuff that we were playing in my high school band. And I found some hipper jazz records in my dad's collection and kind of got into it that way. He had, some really good, 1970s Buddy Rich records and John Ellis stuff. And he was really into the kind of big band that was, really cutting edge at the time he was in college. So all the really hip, 1970s West Coast stuff were records that I would, find and listen to on my own also later on.
Well, you're a well-educated man, and you probably have had some good mentors in your life. What's some good advice you've gotten as far as your career is concerned?
Oh, my gosh. As a young musician, I guess, I'm 35 now, so I'm, medium young, I guess. Young in the jazz sense. And the main thing is advice for younger players is to, make your own opportunities. You put your own groups together, write your own music. There are, some small subset of the players that are just so good at their instruments that they're just going to be working constantly and don't have to worry about doing anything on their own. But, for the rest of us, you're going to have a much more, satisfying and busy day-to-day career if you're making a lot of the opportunities yourself. So that's my biggest thing. And I've told a lot of, more up-and-coming, jazz composers and stuff. My biggest thing is just always be creating. So if you don't have a piece you're working on right now, start writing something. I've gotten busier and busier over the years, but I still aren't as busy as I'd like to be. I mean, that describes everyone. So if I don't specifically have a commission that I'm working on, or I don't have a deadline coming up, I'll be writing music for myself. So, I've written almost an entire next record since recording this one, just in the space between. Because, it's so important to be writing constantly. So I guess that's my biggest advice.
At this point, you're on your third album. You seem like you're pretty busy. Are you happy with how everything has turned out up to this point?
Oh yeah, I consider myself very fortunate. So, you got to hear the record, and not very many people have yet, because it doesn't actually come out until the beginning of November. November 2nd, I guess, is our official release date. Although I'm sure there are going to be ways to hear some of the tracks ahead of time from that, but it might be different in other parts of the country. But in Los Angeles, there's a really, really deep musician pool. So, if I need a really hot lead alto player, there's probably 20 of them that I can call, that beyond, the top 2 or 3 that you hear on all the records. There's, an additional 20 that are all excellent sight readers and style it perfectly and all that stuff. But, they're also all busy and working because we've got such a good scene here. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to keep a somewhat consistent band and have, everyone good on every chair pretty much every time that we do it. And so so in that way, I consider myself very successful. I've gotten to work with some of my heroes. I came up listening to, John Clayton, and then a few years ago, he hires me to help him orchestrate music for a Kennedy Center thing. I grew up listening to Patrick Williams, and we mixed this record largely in his home studio. and I got to do a rewrite on a record that he had written recently, before he passed. Yeah, I just consider myself very fortunate to get to know all these people and be sort of accepted into their world.
Cool, man. So why do you love jazz?
Why do I love jazz? How much time do we have? It's a deep question. I'm going to get provocative with this one. Is that okay?
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, I hate a lot of jazz. I love a lot of jazz, and I don't like a lot of jazz. I think there's certain things that I love about jazz. I really love the creativity of it and all the different sounds and sort of how you can have something that's at the same time just like really groovy, but also that's, very complex harmonically. And as a composer, I sort of sit in this weird position where I kind of know too much when I'm listening to music. And I'm sure other composers and musicians can relate to this. If I'm listening to something that is too simple, it gets boring very quickly for me. Like I have trouble sitting through a 3.5-minute pop song that might be performed incredibly well. But then I'm able to listen to like a 9-minute, Dizzy Gillespie record with, 5 different solos that go on for, several minutes each and not get bored for a second. That's sort of the beauty of jazz. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of jazz now, but I'm sure this has, been a long time coming. For lack of a better word, like it lacks melody or direction. Like if I'm going to sit through a piece of music that's longer than 5 minutes or so, it really needs to have like a journey. To me, like a piece of jazz music that doesn't build or have direction and is, 6 minutes long, it's sort of like seeing a 4-hour-long movie that doesn't have like a big story arc. Like it could be the most beautifully shot thing in the world, but it could be incredibly boring. And maybe that's the arranger in me, sort of thinking about music from the arranging standpoint. But I get bored really fast with a lot of music, jazz included.
We learn a lot from seeing live shows. What just a live jazz show have you seen that really moved you, that you really remember?
Oh my gosh. So that's a really good question. I think the best live jazz show I've ever seen, and my age and just the particular audience at that night, I'm sure are major factors in this. I was an undergrad at UCLA, so this must have been maybe 2004, and I was 20 or 21, and I went to see the Yellow Jackets at Catalina's in Hollywood. Minter was playing saxophone, but it was like their 2 drummers ago drummer. I think Marcus Baylor was playing drums, and it had the original bassist. I'm just blanking on his name, but it was the Yellow Jackets. The room was packed, and people were screaming during solos. And for someone that's into big band music, the Yellow Jackets are a really, really great quartet. Their music is every bit as complex as any large ensemble thing you'll listen to. That was an incredible night.
Absolutely. So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a perception of you. Your family, your friends, your colleagues, your fans, but you know you best. Who do you think you are?
Who am I?
Yeah, who are you?
Yeah, I'm just a dude trying to make some music. I don't know.
There you go. I like it. That's it. It's the shortest, best answer I've ever gotten right there. I love it. I think this question gets belabored quite a bit, but I think it can be very simple.
No, I could belabor it a tiny bit. My trumpet teacher for years and years is this gentleman named Bill Bing, who in the trumpet community, but anyway, Bill told me at one point not to become a professional musician. At the time, I was graduating high school, and I was deciding between mathematics and music. And he said, if there's any other decision you can make, you should make that decision. So I went to college as a math major, and then I was sort of driven back toward music and just finishing studying music. And, the rest is history. But, I'm a musician because I didn't have a choice to do anything else. I'm just driven to do it.
I like that. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Elliot, thank you for taking some time to talk about the big band, the new album. I hope it does very well. Thank you for opening up about your life in music.
Absolutely, and thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Southern California, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Elliot for his stories and his music. If you want to hear more famous interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friend.
Neon Jazz.